Welcome to CareLab.
It's CareLab Day. I'm so excited.
We're always excited for CareLab Day. We need a new adjective, adverb, adjective.
Don't ask me about English. I don't know anything.
No, verb. Straight up verb, right? Excited?
Yes.
No, am is the verb there. Someone out there can probably help me with this. I apologize.
I'm still gonna be excited about CareLab Day.
Okay. All right. Okay. I am super jazzed today because we have a really, really awesome guest, as you know, Brandy. So we have Helen Bauer here. Helen Bauer has been a nurse for over 30 years, which means she's seen everything. And she specializes in
started when she was 5.
Huh?
And also that she started when she was 5.
Yeah, also because she looks insanely young. There's
Exactly.
yeah, we'll have to get into that a little bit. What your skincare secrets are and whatnot. But Helen, I do want to get through this intro because it's really good. Her bio is very impressive. So Helen's been specializing in hospice and end-of-life care since 2009. She's a certified hospice and palliative registered nurse with experience in patient care, nursing management, quality, and compliance. And her passion for advocacy at the end of life can be heard on the Heart of Hospice podcast, which you should definitely check out just as soon as you finish listening to this episode of CareLab. And she talks all about hospice philosophy, how to get the most from your hospice experience, and advanced care planning. Over the years, Helen has helped hundreds of families and hospice professionals navigate their hospice journeys by providing support, education, and encouragement. And Helen, thank you so much for being here with us today on CareLab.
Well, thank you for the invite. I feel a lot of pressure to live up to the bio. I feel like maybe that was a little bit inaccurate, right? Made me sound a lot better than I am.
No, I mean, listen, it's your fault for having all of that experience if you feel pressure from it.
With age comes experience. What can I tell you?
Yeah. No, I have no doubt that you're going to live up to it and more because you are one, totally amazing at what you do, incredibly knowledgeable, and also Heart of Hospice podcast is huge and amazing.
Oh my gosh, over 500 episodes now.
What?
Yeah.
How long ago did you start it?
We start season 9 in August of 2024. So in just a few weeks, actually. We're finishing season 8. So we've been doing this for a while.
How do you denote, this is a dumb podcast question probably, but how do you denote the difference between seasons? Because I feel like it just kind of keeps rolling. Do you have like defined times when you're recording and you take a break between seasons or?
We actually record year round, which is a little grueling. We try to take December off, just to give a few weeks during the holiday season. But we started August 1st was season 1, and we go through, it's just a regular calendar year from August to August.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. People, at least the way we do it, the way I do it, it's a lot of work.
What made you decide that you wanted to start a podcast? What is it that you wanted to be sure to share in this format?
I had a friend who also works in end-of-life care, and he said, there aren't any good podcasts out there about end-of-life care, and what we know about people that are working in end-of-life care or need information about end-of-life care is they're tired. They don't necessarily have a lot of money to throw at getting resources. They need to be able to access the resource 24/7. They need to be able to listen to it in pieces and then come back later on and pick up another piece. And they should be able to hear resources from all these different experts. And a podcast is perfect for that because you can listen to it so many different places. It doesn't cost anything. And you can listen to it while you drive from patient to patient or while you're doing 10 minutes worth of laundry.
Yeah, that
was what our thinking was.
I think that's actually my favorite thing about podcasts in general is I can consume them in pretty much any place doing whatever I'm doing. Like I can be on a run and listen to a podcast. I can be doing the laundry and listen to a podcast. I can be driving to appointments or to work or carpooling my kids around, whatever. And it's just a great way to either be entertained or get a lot of good information, especially when the podcast is hosted by someone, if you're looking for education, finding a podcast that is hosted by someone who really knows what they're talking about and is kind of an insider. It's like one of the best formats you can get to get like just really good real world stuff. And so again, I'll just plug one more time, guys, you have to check out Heart of Hospice. if you haven't yet. It's really, really good info. We, oddly enough, we're not supposed to just be talking about podcasts here today, though. I have, so I do have a fun question to ask you before we do start to talk about hospice. And I know we wanted to dive into some kind of myths about hospice today. We're going to get into that. But first, I have a fun question for you both. Are you ready for it?
Ready as
Probably
we'll ever
not.
be.
Okay. What is one thing that you have done lately, like you personally have done, that you always tell your patients or clients not to do? And there's something stupid that you've done that you tell other people not to do. Probably, or maybe that's just me. But you know what I'm talking about.
That's a hard question, I think. Helen, you got to answer?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good.
Oh, God,
That
I'm
was
so
an
glad
easy
I'm not.
question. I mean,
No, I'm so glad I'm not the only one. I was like, I'm the only one doing stupid stuff I tell people not to do.
Nurses are notorious for this because it's always do as I say, not as I do. We are terrible role models. So I'll go ahead and true confess, Brandy. So I have a bad habit of getting into social media late at night instead of disconnecting from devices. You know, I look up and I've been on Instagram and it's almost 10:30. And I know that's terrible for my sleep hygiene. It doesn't help me sleep well. It's not good for just my mental calm, you know, my spiritual calm. And so, yeah, I'll tell people, patients and families all the time, make sure that you disconnect at least 2 hours before you go to sleep. And yeah, I'd have to confess and cop to that one.
Yeah, mine is similar. It's sleep in general, sleep hygiene, and like how important sleep is for your body and how it helps with your brain function and all of that good stuff. However, I get way less sleep than I should get every night. And I don't have any excuses anymore. I used to blame it on having a little baby, but now she's almost 2, so it's really not the problem. And it's that I just stay up too late and get up too early, even though sleep is really important. So that's my bad habit.
Man, yeah, sleep is insanely important. I talk all the time about how I gave up caffeine like 3 months ago to get better sleep. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I tell you what, I sleep so much better now. It's absolutely insane. That said, okay, my stupid thing is really bad.
We're ready for it.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
hear.
so I just want to preface this by saying that I teach people all the time about home safety, home modification, environmental adaptation to keep people safe and functional. And I'm a certified fall prevention specialist. And this is what I did. I needed something that was high up in a cabinet. So instead of going to get a step stool or something like that, which we could have a whole other conversation about step stools, right or wrong. But before I went ahead and I just decided to climb up onto the countertop. So I'm like on the countertop reaching around and I'm just up there going like, "Oh my gosh, you are such a fool."
Looking at yourself.
I'm
Out of
looking
body
at
experience.
I'm looking at myself like, I'm picturing myself from across the room like, what are you doing right now? If any of your clients or patients ever did this, you would absolutely have a fit. This is the worst decision ever, and yet here you are. So that's my confession. And now because I've publicly shamed myself, I probably won't do it again.
Yeah, you need to reorganize your kitchen so you don't need to go up and climb on top of the counter.
I
That's what a
know.
good OT would do. I don't know about you, but you know.
That's a fact. I have no rebuttal to that. You are correct. I'm a bad OT in that moment. Okay. All right. Are we ready to CareLab right now?
Let's CareLab it.
Okay. So, Helen, we're here to talk about serious stuff today in terms of myths about hospice. I know that there are so many of them. What's like one of the main ones that comes to mind for you?
So there's so many, it's hard to choose, but I think the one, if I had to choose a main one, I would choose one that sort of covers as a big umbrella, is that patients lose their rights when they choose to go with hospice care, that they lose their rights, which is not true. And that covers things like the right to have different people from the hospice team come in your house or not, and the right to decide whether you can come on and off hospice, and the right to choose which medicines you can take or you have to take. And I think it's a loss of control, at a time where you already feel like things are out of your control anyway. But yeah, I would say the loss of all your rights and your voice and your ability to make decisions for yourself, I think that's probably the biggest misunderstood aspect of hospice.
Do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brandy.
I'm wondering, like, that makes a lot of sense actually, because we all want to control the things that are happening, and this is an out of control experience. And I am wondering if you have any like aha moments that people say frequently too. So like maybe they were resistant or came to hospice later than they could have benefited from. And then now that they're receiving hospice services, like what kinds of things do you hear from people then?
Oh my gosh. The classic sentence is, I wish we had known about this, whatever it is, sooner. I wish somebody had told us that we could have chosen hospice a year ago. I wish somebody told me that we could transfer agencies. I wish somebody told me that we didn't have to have a chaplain come and talk to us. I wish somebody had told me that they would supply oxygen here in the house. There's so many different things, but hearing people say that, that's that moment where it clicks and they realize this could have been better. It could have been different if we had had the support and the education, which all falls on the healthcare community. But yeah, those are those aha moments. And hopefully those aha moments don't come after the hospice experience is done with, after the patient's death. That happens a lot. I wish we had done all these different things sooner and had a bigger hospice experience, but they don't recognize that until after the patient has died already.
So there's two things that I'm really picking up on you saying there. One is that people are maybe not opting into hospice as soon as they could, and so not getting all the benefits of that. But also, and maybe this is like the bigger picture here, I'll let you take it away however you want to, that hospice is not a cookie cutter plan of care. It's still an individualized plan of care, and people don't, it's not like you come in and you get these services and that's what you get. It's still about the individual and meeting that person's needs versus a general kind of construct of providing care.
It is. It's a lot like going to Luby's or Piccadilly, the cafeteria where you get to pick and choose what you want out of it. Now, they're still going to have the same things on the menu, but there are certain pieces where patients and caregivers can pick and choose what they would like to have. If a patient, say for instance, a cancer patient, is up and ambulatory, able to walk safely and do their own personal care. So maybe when they come on hospice, they don't need an aide at the very beginning to help them with showering or bathing. So they choose not to use that part of the hospice service at the very start of things. As their needs change, they can come back and say, you know what, I'd like to have somebody, an aide come in 3 days a week for standby assist, to make sure that I'm safe, I don't have any falls. And then later on, as the patient's needs change again, you can say, I need the aide to come 5 days a week because now my mother is incontinent and she's bedbound, and so we need help more frequently. So there's some flexibility there, and it should be that way, right? We are a system taking care of human beings, and it's almost like an apples and orange system, right? We have a business, an industry, a factory that provides care for human beings that are dying at the end of their lives. And it's hard to individualize that, but it is important to keep it as a focus.
Hey there, it's Amelia. Listen, I am so thrilled to have a great resource like Ask Sammy as part of the CareLab team, and here's why. It's a game changer for aging in place because it makes it so simple. All you do is ask. Just type in your question or even tell Sammy what the problem is and get tailored solutions. Everything from innovative adaptive equipment to comprehensive resources. It's a great way to become more empowered, to live more independently, and to live with greater confidence. And my favorite thing about how Ask Sammy works is it's deeply rooted in dignity and practicality. So, whether you're a fellow therapist, a care partner, or someone who's seeking solutions for themselves, visit www.asksammy.com. We're going to link it in the show notes so you can find it there. Start making home more accessible today. Now, back to the show.
So I think maybe before we dive any deeper into hospice, could you tell us like a few things that hospice is and a few things that hospice is not, so that we have like a better definition, working definition to go through?
Yes, this is one of my favorite things because there's so many misconceptions about what hospice is. So hospice is not a place. Hospice is a philosophy, a type of care. Just as if you wouldn't say, I'm going to go on to oncology, you're going to receive oncological care. Hospice is the same way. There are places where they do provide hospice care, hospice homes, hospice houses, but for the most part, over 95% of the care we provide is in people's homes. So it's a type of care, and it is for people who are nearing the end of their lives. Under the regulations that we function under right now, a person has to have a life expectancy of 6 months or less. So that is yes part of hospice, but the no part of hospice is if you are still eligible at the end of the 6 months, do they kick you off? And the answer to that is no, as long as you still qualify. As long as you still qualify.
Right, because sometimes people aren't good, like doctors aren't always good. Actually, research shows doctors are really bad at determining how long people have to live, right? So it's possible that you could actually be on hospice for much longer than that 6 months
Yeah.
if it's something that you needed, right?
Yeah, a year, 2 years, as long as you still qualify. As
Mhm.
long as you still qualify. And prognostication, trying to estimate how much longer a person has to live, that is a science and an art. And human beings are very individual. Disease processes like dementia and neurodegenerative disorders, they're very different and they take a long, long time. Cardiac disease and Alzheimer's and dementia are two of the longest length of stay, we call it. It's the longest time patients spend in hospice care. So yeah, prognostication and trying to figure out how long somebody has, it's a sticky business, I think.
Can you, and I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you a little bit, but so we can go back to what you were going to say if you want to. But I have a question about, I think something that people often get confused about and sometimes frightened of is the difference between like palliative care and hospice care. Can you talk a little bit about what the difference between those things are?
Yes. So palliative care is another philosophy of care. It's another type of care. It is providing symptom management, psychosocial and emotional and spiritual support while a patient with an illness is receiving treatment. It can be a chronic illness, it can be a serious illness, but it's in conjunction with receiving aggressive treatment. Hospice is the foregoing of the aggressive treatment and still receiving all that symptom management and support. So the way I was taught it, the simplest way I know of to explain it is all hospice care contains palliative care, but not all palliative care contains hospice. That's the simplest way. It gets a little confusing because palliative care is a fairly new specialty, and I think a lot of folks working in other healthcare silos don't even really clearly know what palliative care is for.
But is there a clear delineation between one and the other? Meaning, like, do all palliative cares provide the same smorgasbord of things in the same way that hospice is pretty well defined as what is available, even though you can tailor it to what your person needs?
I think palliative care, even for me, is probably more vague. I think you're right, Brandy. But it's definitely the symptom management. But I think people also don't know there is psychosocial and spiritual support. A social worker, a chaplain, they are part of a palliative care team as well. There's a lot of discussion around advanced care planning with your palliative care team, but it does focus on symptom management and comfort while you're seeking treatment.
Gotcha. I wanted to go back to something that you said a little bit ago and understand a little bit more about not you talked about like the myths, and I think you kind of talked about it from a patient and family perspective. Do you notice that clinicians have some myths as well. Because one of the things you said was that the line that people say after they have received hospice care is, "I wish I would have known X, Y, or Z sooner." And that's kind of on healthcare professionals. That you're not encountering hospice just like from home directly. Like usually you've had some kind of course of stay and acute or whatever. And so you've been in the medical system. So we medical system team members should be bringing this up. And so I wonder if we have our own biases too, that keep us as clinicians from talking about it sooner.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. And I think there are a lot of things that weigh in on that. Bias is definitely one of those things, right? Because while we're clinicians, we do bring our human biases and experiences and identities into the care of the patients that we provide care for, right? If you have a brain, you have a bias, right? Human beings are just wired that way. But I think also that we could work for years in different silos. If you work in the hospital, you would never know what hospice at home looks like, because you would never have seen that. I worked in home health. I've been in community-based care for over 30 years. And I worked in home health, never referred a patient to hospice. But those are literally linked services that you would expect a home health patient, if they declined and did not do well, then the referral would be made out to hospice. But I did not know what hospice was. And I think that's very common. So because I've worked in community-based care, it's mostly been geriatrics. I don't have any familiarity or experience with pediatric hospice. Thank goodness, that's not my gift. But if you told me, okay, you need to go deliver a baby, good luck with that. I have no experience with that other than my own personal experience having 2 kids. So I think we're very siloed and working very independently of each other in a system that's we like to call as a continuum, which implies that there's some sort of smooth flow and transition. And I don't think we're very good at that, at talking to each other, learning about each other. In fact, I know we're terrible at talking about each other, because there are a couple of phrases that I would really like for healthcare clinicians to stop saying. Do not ever say, "There is nothing else we can do," and then follow that up with a referral to hospice. That has a hugely destructive impact on your patient, on their caregivers, and on their future relationship with a hospice team.
Yeah, because it's a hopeless statement, and it's saying, this is hopeless. Go here, you go with this team that works with hopeless people. Right. And that's not at all what it is. Yeah, no, I had never thought about it that way.
Oh, it's inaccurate. And I think so. Say you have a patient who's been dealing with renal failure, and they've been getting dialysis and working with a nephrologist for years, and the nephrologist says, "There's nothing else I can do for you. I'm going to send you over to hospice." That trust relationship there that they've had for years, maybe through health crises and hard decisions about dialysis and shunt placement and things like that, all of a sudden that feels like abandonment to that patient. And then hospice has to build from scratch a relationship that creates trust, and at a very intimate, very intense, very vulnerable time in a person's life, and often not soon enough, not early enough.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because I like to think of like, what are the resources we can access to make your life as best as possible at this current stage, right? And so, I've literally never said that statement, because I never feel like there's nothing else we can do. And, I'm not in medicine, and so it's not action-based, it's more resource-driven, and like, what can we change and adapt, right? And I like to think of it as like, oh, maybe it'll be time that we bring in hospice to provide XYZ services. This will support you, right? Like, exactly. You going back and forth to the hospital because you keep having a fluid overload, and it's a challenge for you to get to the hospital and back, and it causes all these strains and challenges. Maybe we could be a little more proactive and come up with some ways to make you more comfortable at home and have somebody be able to come to the house who can manage that without necessarily going to the hospital. Or like hospice provides adaptive equipment, like hospital beds and things like that. And maybe instead of you trying to find the resources to pay for those things, maybe because you already qualified, let's consider hospice, because you could have that plus this other additional care. And I don't know if that's if I had better success, because I've never tried it a different way, but if it feels less like, here you go, good luck, and more like, let's bring this in and use this to help, help our whole situation holistically.
What if we actually said to patients when they were diagnosed with a serious illness or even a chronic illness, talk about what the continuum would look like all the way through that lifespan, and say, we're going to be treating you with aggressive care. There are so many options we're going to be able to offer you. When those options have been used up or we find they don't work anymore, we're going to try this and this XYZ. Oh, and by the way, while you're receiving treatment, we want to include palliative care, because that's really going to help keep you comfortable and support the people around you and help you guys cope with what's going on. And at some point, when those courses of treatment don't work for you anymore, we're going to switch focus and we're going to provide you with hospice care. Hospice care is when you get to closer to the end of your life and have those conversations way back, way upstream to where they're not so scary at the very last minute.
I think that's super hard to do, though, because as a clinician, you're mostly, people think about their job as making people better. And then to introduce the idea that we might not be able to do that for the rest of your life, which we all know, right? We know that nobody's living forever, right? But to say it out loud, I think feels like failure in some people's eyes, right? And like, I'm accepting that I'm not going to be able to change what the end is going to be like, even though we know everybody has an end. But it would be, I don't know about you, Amelia, but I don't remember having any education about hospice in school. And so if we would learn to think about the continuum and include hospice in it, because everybody comes to an end at some point, then we all could have a better conversation about it. CareLab listeners, it's Brandy, and as the founder of a platform made to make aging in place easier for everyone, I knew it would be incomplete if we did not have education, especially for caregivers. So whether you're a family caregiver or somebody who trains a whole organization, Higher Standards caregiver training videos are for you. I'm so proud that we were able to partner together with Amelia in order to provide these to you, because they're easy for everybody. You get great occupational therapist-led training on topics like transfers and how to care for someone as they age, or maybe as things change when you have Parkinson's. So no matter if you're the loved one who doesn't know exactly what to do next because things are getting different, or if you're a professional who trains caregivers that go into the community and you need some quality education, you get both from Higher Standards Caregiver Training. And you need to check them out at higherstandardscaregivertraining.com.
I'm trying to remember if I want to say that I had like maybe a particular faculty member or professor who had experience with hospice and had experience with palliative care. And like, so those conversations came up. But in terms of it being a formal course that we went over or anything, certainly not. And of course, that's I think that we could have another conversation about the role of therapy in hospice and how it's basically never utilized when really could be heavily utilized. But I also want to push back a little bit on the idea that it is like hard to have that conversation about the stages of a chronic disease or process. And I think it is hard if we have the mindset that it's only our job to solve this one problem in this one time. And I think, and maybe this is because I'm an OT, and I think, Brandy, you probably come from this perspective as well, is like, I've never, ever approached a situation, any problem that anyone's ever come to me with, I've never said, I don't know, there's nothing I can do for that, because that's just not my job. My job is to solve any problem that the client puts in front of me with whatever tools that are available and figure it out. And I think that it really but like, that doesn't make us or OTs like special or magical. It's just about our mindset in terms of how we do things. And I think that if we had a reframing of mindset amongst our healthcare system in general, where it really was about actually providing that continuum of care.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, Helen, not just saying that we're going to do it, but really thinking about it and doing that, then it is entirely possible that it could be done. And so one more point on this I'll say is I think that also highlights the real benefit of working in lots of different layers of healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a healthcare provider and maybe you love acute care, but acute care is just one little slice of it, go out and explore other areas. Do a little PRN, home health, work in rehab, work in a skilled nursing or LTAC or something like that, because all of these levels of care are important and you have no idea what you're really recommending or making a referral to unless you have like been in their boots on the ground and seeing what it is. And it makes people much stronger providers to have that background of an experience. And of course, the point of that being makes it so we can really serve people and truly keep their quality of life and their individual needs much more in mind, just opposed to just thinking like, this is what my job is here right now, and I got 20 people to see today and I'm going to get it done. That's not a super helpful way of thinking about things from your patients or your client's perspective.
That is such a good point, Amelia, because when I think about physicians that don't actually have a really good understanding of the hospice services that are provided, that tell a caregiver, I'm going to make a referral to hospice because you can get more help than you're getting with home health, except they don't know what the criteria is for qualifying for hospice to make sure that the patient's terminally ill. And so they create these unrealistic expectations, one of which is they're going to have a caregiver there, a part of the hospice team as a caregiver there to help with caregiving responsibilities. That is not something that hospice teams provide. We are not going to be in the house 24/7. We are not going to staff your person and take care of them. We may not even be there when they die. Its timing is individual. But I think even physicians don't have the education that they need to make a referral for a service they've never received, they've never witnessed, and they just don't have those resources. So my pushback on that is we are a very information-driven industry. There are resources out there. There are certifications, classes, webinars, education. If this is a conversation you need to be having with your patient, especially advanced care planning, and you are billing for it in your practice, get yourself educated, period. Because I didn't receive any education on end-of-life care and hospice when I was in nursing school either. There are very few programs that offer anything like that, even in med schools. And okay, so we know that's there. But if this is still your practice and you're not a brand new person going through school, get out there and get the education. I think we have a tendency to whine about how we haven't been given the training. Then go out there and get it for yourself. Go out there and get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would argue to say too that you could be even lazier than that and just have your correlating hospice or somebody that y'all refer to come and talk to you regularly. This is a thing that happened in one of the home healths that I was in. And so we have a weekly team meeting, and every couple of weeks or every month, somebody from our accompanying hospice team would come and talk to us a little bit about what's available, new services, things like that, so that we had it top of mind, and also that we could understand, oh, I didn't know that was a thing that we could do, or that this is a qualifying thing or something like that. And it's just like a little 15 minutes plugged into what we're already learning and doing, so it doesn't have to feel like I have to get a whole certification or get another job. It's just more like get some experience. I'm just trying to say that there's lots of ways to gain some experience. And I also feel like I did work in a whole bunch of different settings. I think it's very valuable, but that is kind of hard to do sometimes for some people. And even if you just understand who's before you and who's after you, like in the continuum of care, and like have good experience with that, at least, I think that makes it so much better for you preparing your patients for whatever the next step is, whether you're ER to acute care, or you're in rehab and you understand what happened in acute and you understand what's going to happen in home health, and especially in home health, understanding hospice and what happens in acute, I think are easy ways to help make it feel safer for your patients and families to transition through this really behemoth of a medical system.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really the onus of this is on us.
Mm-hmm.
It's on us. You know better, you do better.
And isn't it bonkers that we don't and haven't been doing better, considering that end of life is one of, in my opinion, the most important parts of everyone's life. It is going to happen. And how it happens, I think it really matters. It matters to the person who is transitioning, and it matters to their family. Like, it matters a lot. It should be good whenever we can possibly make it good, right?
Yes. So when I went through nursing school, everybody had to go through labor and delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. But we did not have a class on death and dying. And yet, as a nurse, every single patient I have is going to die at some point, but not all of them are going to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The system is very inadequate in places like that.
I think it's actually our society, right? Because we put a lot of onus into birth and new life coming into the world, which is awesome. And it is a special time. But you're right, not everybody experiences that. And so, but everybody does experience end of life. I'm going to really butcher this, but I remember reading or watching something about a Nordic type country or city that had a really big problem with spending a lot of their healthcare dollars because they had a socialized medicine system on end of life care, similar to what happens here. And they took a different approach to it, and they made it a law or very important for you to do advanced care planning. And so they kind of had, you know how you have community health workers in certain countries and areas to try to be like, this is your neighbor and they're trained to help you understand certain things so you can learn it from somebody you trust, even if there's not a doctor for miles around. They kind of employed a group of people to do that and like go into their communities and like just start having conversations about end of life. Hey, what do you want to have happen when things, and just like put it as part of societal norms. And because they did this grassroots approach and everybody felt the pressure or onus to I can't remember what the carrot and stick were, but to create their plan, people created plans. And when they had a plan, then when it actually got to the end of life, there was like less stress and friction. And they spent a whole lot less on end of life care because they found out that most people wanted XYZ, but not A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it really changed. But the way they changed their medical system was by changing the conversation society so that it wouldn't be so taboo to talk about.
It's interesting. So it's just conversations at
Yep.
the dinner table. You see somebody in the grocery store, and in American culture, that's weird. You know, we have death over dinner, and we have death cafes where people actually do gather to talk about dying. But just to have that kind of woven into our cultural conversation, wouldn't that be interesting and very different?
Yep.
Yeah.
We are almost at the end of our time here on CareLab today, but I want to kind of wrap up here with a last question to you, Helen. We've been talking about a lot of things, and I think we've focused on, you know, how can healthcare providers make this better? But if you're talking to a listener who is right now, they're not a healthcare provider, they're a family caregiver, or they have a loved one who is facing a chronic or terminal illness, and they're thinking about hospice, what is some advice that you would share with them about either starting the hospice process or why they should think about it? Or I leave it in your hands what you think the best piece of information to share with that person is.
Well, go to your healthcare team first. You don't have to wait for them to bring that information to you or bring up the topic of hospice. You can get information in so many different places. My podcast is one. You can get information about what it would be like to be on hospice without ever committing to anything, But go to your healthcare provider, go to your physician, your nurse practitioner, and say, I just want to have a conversation. We're just information gathering. Because I think having information about hospice makes you feel less fearful. Knowledge is power. Knowledge makes us feel strong. And when you go into something feeling stronger, it's less intense and it's less traumatic. So I would say bring up that topic and don't be afraid to use the D words, death, dying. Don't be afraid to use those words. It's coming to all of us, and having hospice there can really, really make things easier and enhance quality of life, I think, for both people with serious illness and the people who take care of them.
Well, Helen, thank you so much for being here on CareLab. And also, I just want to say thank you for the incredible body of work that you have put out through Heart of Hospice and your other work to help people navigate end of life in a way that is positive and provides quality of life during that time. I just can't overstate how important, we think that is, because it is just so important that people have those experiences. So thank you for the work that you've done, both as a nurse. I'm sure you have served, I'm sure everyone, listen, if you were on hospice and Helen walked in, what, like the lottery, odd situation to win the lottery in. But I mean, seriously, so I just know that everyone whose lives you touched have been so lucky and fortunate to have you. And I feel like we're really lucky and fortunate to certainly have you on CareLab, but also to be able to go back and look at all these episodes of Heart of Hospice and continue to learn from you. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here on CareLab today.
Thank you. That's so kind. I've had a great time with you guys.
All right, guys. If you enjoyed this episode of CareLab, please make sure that you are subscribing. Just click that little button right now. Make sure that you're liking it. And please make sure, if there's anyone who you think would benefit from this episode, please share it with them so that they can get that information too. And we will see you next time on CareLab. Bye.